To walk like you belong in every room is not a simple act of movement, it is a declaration. It is a silent speech that speaks before your lips ever part, a message written in the language of presence, confidence, and self-worth. It is the art of stepping into spaces that may not have been carved for you, may not have been expecting you, but will without doubt take notice of you. It is not arrogance, nor is it mere performance. It is the understanding that you are worthy, that your existence is enough, that no room is too grand for the spirit that resides within you. It is a lesson in self-belief, a lesson in knowing that no matter the soil upon which you stand, it will hold you just the same. But what does it mean to walk like you belong? Is it the stride of the powerful, the poised, the ones who know no fear? Or is it the quiet assurance of the ones who have been broken but still rise? It is both and more. It is the courage to carry yourself with dignity in places that may question your presence. It is the choice to move with grace when the world tempts you to shrink. It is the audacity to say, without words, I am here, and I am enough. And so when you step into a room, be it a boardroom, a stage, a foreign land, or even the uncharted territories of your own dreams, know this: the ground beneath your feet does not belong to those who doubt you. It belongs to those who dare to claim it. There was a woman once, her hands rough with labor, her back bent from years of carrying burdens unseen. She walked with eyes cast down, always watching her steps, as if the earth itself had to grant her permission to move. But one day she lifted her head. One day she straightened her spine. One day she decided that she would no longer ask the world for space, she would take it. That day she stepped into the marketplace, not as a shadow, not as a whisper, but as a storm of quiet strength. And the people noticed, not because she spoke loudly, not because she demanded their gaze, but because she carried herself as though she belonged, as though she had a right to be there. And so she did. Too often, we shrink ourselves before the world has even had the chance to see us. We walk into rooms with apologies written in our posture, with hesitation stitched into our steps. We make ourselves small, believing that space is given and not taken. We watch others move with ease, with certainty, with a power we tell ourselves we do not possess. But tell me, who told you that you were unworthy? Who convinced you that your place in this world had to be earned in ways they themselves never had to? You do not ask the sun if it may shine. You do not ask the rivers if they may flow. They do what they were created to do. So why must you ask permission to take up space? Why must you wait for the approval of others to stand tall in the fullness of who you are? To walk like you belong in every room is not about pretending to be something you are not. It is about knowing who you are and carrying that truth with you, no matter where you go. It is about stepping forward with faith when fear tells you to turn back. It is about holding your head high when the world tries to lower your gaze. There will be doors that do not open easily. There will be rooms that will try to swallow you whole, that will whisper that you are too much, too different, too bold, too quiet. Walk in anyway. There will be faces that do not welcome you, that will size you up and decide you do not fit their picture of belonging. Walk in anyway. There will be moments when your own heart will tremble, when doubt will curl its fingers around your resolve. Walk in anyway. For you belong not because they say so, but because you exist. And existence in itself is proof enough. There was a man once, his skin dark like the richest soil, his voice steady like a river moving through time. He had been told since birth that he was less worthy, less capable, less deserving of the spaces where power lived. But he did not listen. He walked into halls built by hands that never imagined him within them. He sat at tables where his ancestors had only ever been made to serve. And when he spoke not with permission, but with purpose. He spoke because he had something to say. He walked because he had somewhere to go. And history remembered his steps. You see, the world does not make room for those who wait. It does not shift for those who ask timidly. It bends to those who walk like they belong. Not because they have never known struggle, not because they have never known fear, but because they have decided that neither struggle nor fear will decide their steps. When you enter a room, enter as though the walls were built with you in mind. When you stand as though the ground beneath you was laid just for your feet. When you speak as though the air was created to carry your words. And when they ask you, who told you that you belong here? Look them in the eye and say, I did. There is a rhythm to belonging, a silent beat that plays beneath the skin of those who dare to claim their space. It is not about wealth, nor is it about status. It is about a knowing, and knowing so deep that no rejection can uproot it, no doubt can corrode it, no resistance can unmake it. To walk like you belong is to understand that you were created with intention, shaped with purpose, and sent forth with a right to be. But too many walk with borrowed steps, moving through the world as though they are intruders in their own story. They lower their voices in rooms where others speak freely. They make themselves smaller in spaces that should expand to fit their greatness. They measure their worth by the permission of others, waiting for an invitation to stand tall. But who gave them the authority to decide your place? Who crowned them the keepers of your belonging? Somewhere, there is a young girl with dreams too large for the place that holds her. She has been told to be quiet, to be soft, to take only what is given and never ask for more. But there is a fire in her spirit that will not be dimmed. She watches the world move, watches those who take what they want without apology, and she wonders if she too can claim her space. If she too can walk into a room and know that it belongs to her as much as to anyone else. If she too can rise unshaken, unafraid. And the answer is yes. Somewhere there is a young boy whose voice has been stolen by doubt, whose feet hesitate at the threshold of greatness. He has been taught that confidence is a gift given to the fortunate, that power is reserved for those born into it. But he is more than the limits placed upon him. He is more than the fears that hold him back. If only he knew that the moment he decides to step forward, the ground will recognize him. The world will not give him a seat, he must take it. To walk like you belong is to refuse to beg for what is already yours. It is to understand that no space is complete without you, that no table is whole unless you take your seat. It is to recognize that your presence is not a disruption, but a necessary piece of the world's design. There are those who will tell you otherwise, those who will look at you with eyes that question your right to be where you stand. They will measure you against their own expectations, their own prejudices, their own limitations. And when they do, you must not flinch. You must not bow to the weight of their doubt. You must not let their narrow vision shape the way you see yourself. There was a woman who was told she did not belong in the rooms she entered. She was too loud, they said. Too bold. Too much of everything they feared. But she walked in anyway. She did not wait to be welcomed. She did not shrink to fit their comfort. She did not ask permission to exist in her fullness. And because she refused to be ignored, the world had no choice but to make space for her. You must learn to do the same. You must learn to trust the ground beneath you, to believe in the power of your own presence. You must walk as though you have been expected, as though your name is already written in the foundation of every room you enter. You must carry yourself with the understanding that you are not an afterthought, you are a force, a presence, a light too bright to be overlooked. And yet so many hesitate, so many linger at the doorway, unsure if they are truly meant to step forward. They wonder if they are enough, if they are smart enough, strong enough, worthy enough. But let me tell you, worth is not something you prove. It is something you own. It is not something given, it is something you decide. The moment you claim it, the moment you stop doubting it, the world will have no choice but to recognize it. There will be times when the room feels unwelcoming, when the silence is thick with unspoken judgments, when the air itself seems to whisper that you do not belong. But you must not turn back. You must not let the discomfort of others determine the depth of your own belonging. You must learn to stand firm, to walk forward, to take up the space you were meant to occupy. Some will mistake your confidence for arrogance, your assurance for defiance. Let them. Their discomfort is not your burden to carry. Their inability to see your worth does not mean it is not there. You were not made to fit into their smallness. You were not made to seek their validation. You were made to be fully and unapologetically. There was a man who was told that doors were not meant for him, that ceilings were not meant to be broken, that paths were not meant to be forged by those like him. But he walked anyway, and with every step, the walls shook. With every step, the ceilings cracked. With every step, he proved that belonging is not something granted, it is something claimed. You must claim yours. You must walk with a knowing so strong that no force can shake it. You must step into every space as though it was carved with your presence in mind. You must refuse to shrink. Refuse to apologize, refuse to wait for permission to be great. Because the truth is you belong. You belong in every room, every conversation, every opportunity. You belong in the spaces that once seemed unreachable, in the places that once felt too grand. You belong in the company of those who move with power, with certainty, with assurance. And when you finally understand this, when you finally accept that no one can take from you what is already yours, you will move through the world differently. You will walk into rooms with your head high, your back straight, your spirit unshaken. You will take your seat at tables where your ancestors were never invited. You will speak with a voice that refuses to be silenced, and the world will notice. The world will listen. The world will make space. Because those who walk like they belong change the very fabric of the spaces they enter. They turn thresholds into gateways, barriers into bridges. They do not wait to be chosen, they choose themselves. They do not seek approval, they approve of themselves. And so when you stand before a door that seems too heavy to push open, push anyway. When you find yourself in a space that feels too grand, stand tall anyway. When you feel the weight of doubt pressing against your spirit, lift your head anyway. Because the world does not belong to those who hesitate. It belongs to those who walk forward, boldly, fiercely, with the unwavering belief that they are meant to be here. And you are. You always have been. As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. There was once a child who dreamed in colors too bright for the world around them. They had a voice that carried a presence that could not be ignored, but from an early age they were taught to quiet themselves. Speak softly, they were told. Do not draw too much attention. They learned to shrink, to fold themselves into the corners of rooms where they would not be noticed. But something in them refused to disappear. Something in them burned like an ember beneath the surface, waiting for the day it would become flame. And so one day, they stood up taller. They straightened their shoulders. They walked into spaces where they had once felt invisible, and they did not whisper. They did not tiptoe. They did not ask if they were allowed to be there. They simply were. And the world, so accustomed to their smallness, had no choice but to see them in their fullness. To walk like you belong is not about arrogance. It is not about demanding that others move aside. It is about knowing deep in your bones that you do not have to earn your place. You do not have to prove yourself worthy. You do not have to wait for someone else to recognize your value. It has been there all along. But too many people spend their lives apologizing for their own existence. They enter rooms with hesitation in their steps, uncertainty in their eyes, as if waiting for the world to tell them they are allowed to be present. And when that validation does not come, they retreat. They accept invisibility. They accept smallness. They accept whatever space they are given rather than taking the space they deserve. There was once a woman who worked harder than anyone around her. She had ideas that could change the course of history, thoughts that could move mountains. Yet when she entered meetings, she spoke with hesitation. She lowered her voice. She let others speak over her, let others take credit for what she had done. And one day she asked herself why. Why did she let the world silence her? Why did she act as if she needed permission to be brilliant? And so she decided that she would never again wait to be noticed. She would never again ask to be heard. She would walk into every room as though she belonged, because she did. And the moment she decided that, the world began to listen. There will be those who look at you and wonder why you carry yourself with such certainty. They will question your confidence, mistaking it for entitlement. They will wonder what gives you the right to stand where you stand, to speak as you speak, to move through life with assurance. Let them wonder. Let them question. Let them doubt, but do not let them stop you. You do not have to make yourself small to make others comfortable. You do not have to diminish your light so that others can shine. You do not have to pretend you are less than you are to ease the fears of those who cannot match your strength. There was once a young man who walked into a room full of power and wealth, a room where he was not expected to stand tall. He could feel the weight of their gazes, could hear the unspoken words in their eyes, "You do not belong here." But he refused to let that fear shape his steps. He walked as though the floor had been built beneath him, as though the walls had been raised with his presence in mind. And when he spoke, they listened not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. That is the power of belonging. That is the power of knowing who you are, of refusing to let the world convince you otherwise. It is the power of stepping forward even when your heart trembles, of standing firm even when the ground beneath you feels unsteady. Too often, we are told to wait our turn, to stay in our place, to let others decide when and where we are allowed to be. But what if those who came before you had waited? What if the ones who changed history had remained silent, had bowed their heads, had stepped aside? The world is not moved by those who hesitate. It is moved by those who walk forward despite the resistance, despite the doubt, despite the fear. Some will tell you that confidence is something you must earn, that you must prove yourself before you have the right to stand tall. But confidence is not a reward, it is a decision. It is something you claim, something you cultivate, something you choose every single day. There will be doors that remain closed no matter how loudly you knock. There will be rooms where you are not welcome, no matter how prepared you are to be there. But you must never let those moments define you. You must never let rejection teach you to shrink. You must never let someone else's inability to see your worth convince you that it is not there. The greatest among us did not wait to be invited. They did not ask for permission. They did not let the discomfort of others determine the fullness of their own presence. They walked as though they belonged. And in doing so, they changed the spaces they entered. There is a young girl somewhere right now, standing at the threshold of something great. She is afraid. She wonders if she is ready, if she is enough, if she will be accepted. But she must step forward anyway. She must walk into that room as though the world itself has been waiting for her arrival. Because it has. There is a man who has spent years working in silence, afraid to take up space, afraid to claim the recognition he deserves. But he must decide today that he will no longer stand in the shadows. He must choose to walk like he belongs, because the truth is, he always has. And so must you. You must understand that your presence is not a question, it is a statement. You must know that when you enter a space, you do not have to justify your existence. You do not have to explain why you are there. You do not have to prove anything to anyone. The only thing you must do is walk forward. Walk as though you are meant to be there. Walk as though you have something to offer. Walk as though the ground beneath you has been waiting for your steps. And when you do, the world will take notice. The world will adjust. The world will make room. Because those who walk like they belong do not ask for space, they create it. There was a boy who grew up in the shadow of doubt. He had hands that longed to build, a mind that danced with ideas, a heart that whispered of greatness. But every time he stepped forward, there was someone to remind him of his place. Someone to tell him that people like him were not meant to sit at the high tables, were not meant to dream beyond the boundaries set for them. And so, for a time, he believed them. He walked with his shoulders bent, his gaze lowered, his voice swallowed by the noise of those who believed themselves greater. But one day, something in him cracked. A quiet voice, one that had always been there but had long been buried beneath years of doubt, rose within him. It did not shout. It did not demand. It simply told him, "You are more." And from that moment, he chose to believe it. He chose to stand a little taller. He chose to walk with the kind of certainty that made people take notice. And when he entered rooms where he had once felt small, he no longer sought permission. He simply was. There will always be those who try to dictate the terms of your belonging. They will tell you that you must be quieter, that you must soften your edges, that you must wait your turn. But those who wait are often left waiting forever. Those who ask permission are often told no. And so the only choice is to move forward as though the world itself expects you to. There was a woman who was always the last to speak in a room full of men. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she had been taught that her voice was something to be rationed, something to be measured carefully. She had watched others take up space without apology, had watched them be heard even when they had nothing of value to say. And one day she asked herself why she continued to sit in silence while the world moved without her. That day she spoke without hesitation. She did not wait for an invitation. She did not whisper. And the moment she chose to take up space, she realized she had belonged there all along. To walk like you belong is to understand that no one can take from you what you refuse to surrender. It is to recognize that the moment you decide to own your place, the world must make room for you. There will be those who resist, those who try to push you back into the shadows, but they cannot diminish what is already destined. They cannot unmake what has already been set in motion. There was once a man who was told that greatness was not meant for him. He was born into struggle, raised in a world that tried to convince him that his reach should never extend beyond his grasp. But he refused to accept that. He walked into spaces where his presence was unexpected, where his confidence unsettled those who believed power belonged only to them. And because he carried himself as though he belonged, those around him had no choice but to believe it too. Some people will ask you to prove yourself before they acknowledge your worth. They will demand that you justify your place, that you explain why you deserve to stand where you stand. But do not waste your breath. Do not spend your energy convincing those who have already decided not to see you. Instead, walk forward. Speak with certainty. Move with purpose. The moment you stop seeking their approval, you will realize you never needed it in the first place. A young girl sits in a classroom, her hand hovering in the air as doubt creeps into her mind. She knows the answer. She has thought it through. But she hesitates because she has been told, in ways both loud and silent, that her voice is not as important as the others. And so she lowers her hand. But what if she didn't? What if she spoke without waiting for permission? What if she carried herself with the kind of confidence that made people listen, even when they were not prepared to? There are rooms that feel like battlegrounds where every step must be taken with caution, where the weight of history sits heavy on your shoulders. There are spaces where eyes linger too long, where silence speaks louder than words, where the very air feels thick with unspoken judgments. But you must not let that stop you. You must not let discomfort shape your stride. Because the moment you carry yourself as though you belong, the space itself will shift. Some will say that confidence must be earned, that belonging is something given only to the chosen few. But that is a lie told by those who wish to keep you on the outside. Belonging is not a gift, it is a truth you must claim for yourself. There was once a leader who was never meant to lead. He did not come from wealth. He did not have the connections that others relied upon. But he had something greater, an unshakable belief that his presence mattered. And so he walked into spaces where he was unwelcome. He spoke with authority when others tried to silence him. He carried himself with the weight of someone who had already decided he was worthy. And because of that, he rose. You must do the same. You must refuse to apologize for your presence. You must step into rooms as though they were built with you in mind. You must understand that your worth is not conditional, that it is not up for debate. There will be times when you are the only one who looks like you, the only one who speaks like you, the only one who carries the weight of your experience. Do not let that make you small. Do not let that make you doubt your place. Instead, stand even taller. Speak even louder. Let the very fact of your presence be a statement that cannot be ignored. There is someone watching you now, someone who sees the way you move, the way you carry yourself, the way you refuse to be diminished. They are learning from you whether you realize it or not. They are seeing what it means to take up space. And because you walk like you belong, they will one day do the same. The world does not shift for those who hesitate. It does not open its doors to those who wait quietly on the sidelines. It is moved by those who refuse to be overlooked, by those who walk forward even when the path is uncertain, by those who claim their place without apology. And so when you enter a room, do not hesitate, do not doubt, do not shrink. Walk forward. Stand tall. Speak with certainty. Because the moment you believe you belong, the world will have no choice but to believe it too. There was a man who had spent his whole life waiting for the right moment. He waited for the day he would feel ready, the day he would no longer second-guess himself. He waited for the world to tell him that he had finally earned his place, that he had done enough, proven enough. But the days stretched into years, and the years passed in silence. No grand invitation came. No one arrived to tell him it was time to step forward. And then one evening he stood in front of the mirror and saw himself not as the world had taught him to see, but as he truly was. He was already enough. He had been enough from the very beginning. And in that moment he decided he would no longer wait. He walked into the next room as though he had been expected there. He did not hesitate at the threshold. He did not question whether he was welcome. And the people in that room who had once overlooked him, who had once doubted him, found themselves listening. Not because he asked them to, but because he carried himself in a way that demanded to be heard. There is something about certainty that unsettles those who believe in barriers. When you walk as though you belong, when you move without permission, it disrupts the order they have grown comfortable with. It shakes their assumptions. It makes them wonder what else they have misjudged. And so there will be those who try to stop you, not because you do not belong, but because they are afraid of what it means if you do. There was a young woman who had spent her life playing small, tucking her dreams into neat corners where they would not disturb anyone. She had learned to be pleasant, to be agreeable, to take up no more space than necessary. But one day she met someone who did not shrink. She saw a woman who walked with the ease of someone who had never doubted her place, someone who did not wait to be invited into conversations, someone who spoke with a voice that did not tremble. And in watching her, she realized something she had never understood before. The world does not grant you permission. You must take it. From that day forward, she no longer asked. She no longer waited. She did not whisper. She did not look for approval in the eyes of those who had already decided she did not belong. She walked forward, and because of that, others followed. There are rooms you will enter where people will look at you and wonder why you are there. They will scan you up and down, searching for the reason, searching for the thing that makes you worthy. Do not waste your energy trying to convince them. Do not exhaust yourself explaining. Simply walk forward. Take your seat at the table. Speak with the authority of someone who already knows they deserve to be heard, and watch as the world adjusts around you. There was once a boy who had learned early on to dim his light. He had seen the way the world reacted to those who shone too brightly. He had seen what happened to those who dared to believe they belonged. And so he kept his head down. He tried to fit in. He did what was expected, said what was acceptable, lived within the narrow lines drawn for him. But deep inside, he knew there was more. There was something in him that longed to break free. One day, he met a man who carried himself differently, a man who did not hesitate, who did not shrink, who did not bow to the unspoken rules of who was allowed to take up space. And in that moment, the boy saw a version of himself he had never dared to imagine. He saw what it looked like to move through the world with certainty, to belong not because someone had allowed it, but because it was already true. And he decided then and there that he would never again ask permission to be who he was meant to be. There are those who will try to tell you that you must wait your turn, that you must earn your place, that you must prove yourself worthy before you can stand tall. But the ones who change the world are the ones who refuse to accept those lies. They are the ones who step forward before they are ready, who walk into rooms before they are invited, who speak before they are given permission. The greatest among us did not wait to be acknowledged. They did not hesitate at the door. They did not pause to wonder whether they were good enough, smart enough, powerful enough. They moved as though they had already arrived, and because of that, the world could not ignore them. There was a woman who had spent years watching others claim the success she knew she was capable of. She had the ideas, the skill, the passion, but every time she approached the edge of greatness, she hesitated. She wondered if she had done enough, if she had the right to stand among those she admired. And so she remained in the background, waiting for someone to tap her on the shoulder and tell her it was time. But no one did. And then one day she decided she was tired of waiting. She was tired of standing on the sidelines, tired of seeing others move forward while she held herself back. She woke up that morning and told herself, "Today I will move as though I belong." And the moment she did, everything changed. The world is not kind to those who wait. It is not generous to those who hesitate. It does not reward those who shrink themselves to fit into the expectations of others. It bends for those who refuse to bend. It shifts for those who refuse to be moved. It listens to those who speak with the conviction of someone who already knows they are enough. And so you must decide. You must choose every single day to walk with the certainty of someone who belongs. You must silence the voice in your head that tells you to wait, to doubt, to shrink. You must refuse to accept a version of yourself that is anything less than full. There are children watching you. They are learning from you. They are seeing what it looks like to carry oneself with confidence, to move without hesitation, to walk with the weight of someone who knows their own worth. And because of you, they will learn to do the same. There is someone out there who has been waiting for permission. Someone who has been looking for a sign that they are allowed to step forward. Be that sign. Be the example that shows them they do not need to wait, that they do not need to ask, that they do not need to prove anything to anyone. Because the moment you walk like you belong, the world will have no choice but to believe it too. The world does not grant you permission to exist fully. It is a right you must claim for yourself. Every step you take with confidence is a declaration that you are here, that you matter, that you are as worthy as anyone else who has ever walked this earth. There will always be voices whispering doubt, always those who question your presence, but their approval is not required for you to take up space. Their acceptance is not necessary for you to walk boldly into the life that is meant for you. You must move as though every door was built for you to enter. Speak as though your voice was made to be heard. Stand as though your very presence shifts the atmosphere of the room. Because it does. The moment you choose to walk like you belong, you force the world to adjust to your presence instead of the other way around. The moment you stop waiting for an invitation, you realize you never needed one in the first place. This is not about arrogance. It is not about forcing yourself where you do not belong. It is about recognizing that you already belong. It is about understanding that there is no one above you, no one more worthy, no one more deserving. It is about knowing that your existence, your dreams, Your ambitions, all of them are valid, all of them are important. There are people watching you. Some of them are waiting for permission to be who they truly are. Some of them are looking for a sign that it is safe to step forward, and the way you move through the world will tell them everything they need to know. If you shrink, they will shrink. If you hesitate, they will hesitate. But if you walk with certainty, if you carry yourself with the quiet power of someone who already knows they are enough, they will learn to do the same. The world bends to those who refuse to bend. It remembers those who refuse to be forgotten. It makes room for those who refuse to be ignored. And so as you step forward, as you claim your space, as you walk with the full weight of your worth, remember this: you have always belonged. You always will. And the moment you decide to believe it, the world will have no choice but to believe it too.